The intention of justice is to see that the guilty people are proven guilty and that the innocent are freed. Only we have a problem here.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are taking a look at this case from a psychological perspective.
Fun. Everybody was really having a good time.
Does Brian Albert strike you as the kind of guy who is always having fun? No. And here's a news flash for this judge. Mental health professionals have solutions. Because that's the moment for him when he really started to believe that his mother was involved. Right? Closes his eyes because he's now remembering. There is a huge psychological component to what was going on here. And according to this group, Brian Albert Jr. gets like the most celebrated birthday hour of anybody ever. Like every 30 seconds, someone's like, happy birthday! Right? She's trying to lump Colin into that earlier group. Did you take the time, Matt Murphy? On every level that a person could be between incompetence and stupidity, Michael Proctor wins the award. Oh my God. It's not like his 21st birthday.
He's literally making the case for why he was terminated. He's sitting there in front of his parents having text messages.
Definitely someone should give you a gun and a badge.
Horrible text messages read back as if he's the aggrieved party.
Hold on. Have each of you been called murderers?
Who wants to be the one to give Matt the bad news? The dog didn't alert. I don't know where the dog was. I didn't hear any barking. Her name is Sunny. She was named after Santino Corleone. Here's Sunny. Say hi, everybody. There's my Sunny. Hello. That's my Sunny. Sunny barks if you walk by my window and sneeze. You're not really going to deny this, are you?
Liaison between the DAs, so that as we go along, we would know if we had it enough, or we had it all, I should say.
I don't know where the dog was. He doesn't understand why Karen wouldn't want to be with his family. In this case, the thing he had to encourage her to do was not to testify.
You know, and Julie Albert responds to the text message from John, and she goes, "My biggest fear in life is ending up on Turtle Boy."
Stop it.
Oh, you never seen that? Oh, I gotta get you that. Let me.
No way.
Oh yeah,
That's wild.
Yeah,
no
I gotta
way.
dig that up.
But these people are terrified of him. They're absolutely terrified of him. And how do we know that? We know that from the mega motion. Just another day for me, right? Which means it was just not an ordinary day for somebody else. Just when you thought you were out, they pull you back.
Karen Reed plots, she fabricates a conspiracy.
I am just a person who likes to understand, and when something baffles my mind, I need to know. That's going to increase the likelihood that we're going to take some action.
Here she is.
Gotcha. Okay, so your sister.
My sister Jillian, yes.
Oh, it's funny. It really.
That's why he told her to testify that. So, testify that. So, testify that. So.
How dare they? God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome. Hopefully you guys can hear me. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Beningo. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a sixth-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor. And today, we are welcoming to the show a special Tuesday evening show, Mr. Mark Bederow. There he is. Yay.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome, Mark. How are you?
Hey, nice to finally meet you.
You too. It's so funny. This is a brand new open. This is probably like 2 shows old now. So it's really funny watching it as we're sitting here.
Brian Albert doesn't like it. I know that from
No, for sure. Yeah, right. Oh, I know. That makes me want to jump right in because I didn't want to just jump right in, but now I have to because you said that. One of the things, and I wonder so much about this, right? Because how I came to find you and became such a big fan of yours and Melanie's was the first trial. So right at the very beginning of the first trial is when I found out about this case. And I didn't know enough about the law. And it was the first trial I ever watched in real time. And if you're a sports fan, there's nothing quite, the only thing even close to similar is professional sports like postseason baseball, right? So it's that same kind of intensity all the way through. And it's intense. I mean, it was just really, really intense. And I thought I was losing my mind. And then I would listen to you guys and I'd be like, oh, all right. No. It's not just me with the inverted video. Like, it's not just me. It's really happening, right? So that was so helpful. So I thank you so much for that. But then I wonder, like, you then sort of went from being a spectator to then kind of being really front row seat now working with Aiden. What has that been like?
It's pretty unique. I mean, I followed this casually, just reading the Boston Globe Sports, and every now and then click on the Metro section and was aware of a case where, a woman was accused of drunkenly running over her cop boyfriend. Interesting. I do this for a living. We can analyze and whatever, but it sounded like a pretty open and shut, unfortunate thing. Followed it casually. Had a lawyer friend from Massachusetts who started sending me more and more articles about it and tweets, frankly, from a lunatic lawyer named Wendy Murphy, who had some crazy, just ludicrous takes about the law. Started commenting on that, somehow got dragged into some of these streams, just voiced my opinion. Again, as somebody who does this for a living, I was a prosecutor in Manhattan, private practice defense for too many years, more than I'd like to admit anyway. So I had a very strong opinion about the case and how I thought that the case against Karen within 2 hours of reading materials was flawed beyond belief. And I couldn't even believe that she had been indicted, let alone tried. That, got a lot of attention, good and bad, I suppose. Ended up ultimately being engaged, in Aiden's situation, which is a full-time job. That's for damn sure. And even should have ended up in being part of Karen's trial team for the second trial, but that went a different way for a few reasons, which we can talk about or not. But so certainly since then I've been deeply involved in all matters involving this bizarre situation, these orbiting satellites of Karen, Aiden, and things related to them. And so it almost feels like I've been spending more time in Massachusetts than my normal, regular, primarily New York, with a little dose of New Jersey practice. So here we are.
Right. Funny how life just takes you where it does, right? I mean, it's bizarre.
We go where they send us. That's what I always say. I just go where they send me.
Right. And well, first, thank God. I mean, what a wonderful thing that, you got to join Aiden's team and this mega motion, that they call it, but even the letters up and, the whole strategy, and what an amazing document that turned out to be with Olivia Lamb and the hyperlinks, so incredibly informative. And what struck me, and I wonder what it must have been like to see this when you're getting all the discovery, which I know it took a long time to get. They were so on top of him. I mean, his case, this intimidation case, the witness intimidation case, is so intimately tied with Karen's case, because as soon as he opened his mouth in April of 2023, they were on him like that and immediately trying to get, the DA to find a way to indict him. What was it like to see that as it was coming in?
Unique. This is virtually unprecedented. I mean, the idea that whatever your views are of Karen's case, and mine are very strong. I think she was wrongfully prosecuted, never should have been indicted, actually innocent. People can agree or disagree, but in any event, the case against her was catastrophically flawed from the jump. And there are so many issues. And at some point, somebody jumps in as a journalist, draws attention to it in a light that is not good for the prosecution. I mean, and there are serious allegations of corruption in the DA's office and the state police with some help from civilians. The information is sourced from publicly filed documents. That's what journalists do. That's, whether people like it or not, the right to be a journalist and the right to the First Amendment right to publish information that is offensive to people there's a reason why that's the First Amendment. I mean, when they formed the Bill of Rights in 1787, and, in order to get the Constitution ratified, and they had to have a Bill of Rights, and, they had these first 10 amendments, there's a reason why number one was the first, which was the right to free speech and to publish this and that and whatever else. And to see whether you agree or disagree with the method, which, to some is offensive, it can be confrontational, it can be aggressive, whatever you want to call it, to see a government go after somebody for that, but also to go after the very people that are going after this person are the very people being criticized as being corrupt. I mean, this is right out of an Orwell novel. I mean, this should never happen in the US. You would expect this to happen in like Stalin's Soviet Union and Mao's China. This should never happen in the US, where government actors accused of corruption are going after a journalist, accusing them of corruption. And that's exactly what's happened here. And I think it's disgraceful and, in many ways has contributed to, certainly in Norfolk County and other parts of Massachusetts, making them a national laughingstock of criminal justice. I mean, that's just, and that pains me to say that. I'm from there, but the reality is they are an absolute national laughingstock of the way they have been handling serious criminal matters for the past few years.
Oh, it seems like for a little longer than the last few years, right? I mean, to me, what the Karen Reed case sort of highlighted was that this was a pattern, that these people had been engaging in this type of behavior, this type of carelessness, whether it was the discovery, late discovery, search warrants, getting the search warrants after the fact, all of what we've seen. It just seems like this was like standard operating procedure, and maybe a little bit more extreme because it was a Boston cop, but it just seemed like this is business as usual for these folks.
There's no question that the culture, at least in that county, is no question that you'll get what you get when we decide to give it to you, and you'll deal with it. And you saw that even just a couple of months ago in another case, a murder case, but not a sexy murder case. There's a guy who is about to be tried for murder. I think his name is Miles King. It wouldn't be an interesting case, but for the fact that there is a shining bright light on Norfolk County. By all accounts, I don't know anything about the man, but it's It's what you would call classic street crime. He's alleged, I think he's accused of being a gangbanger. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Just committing a very stereotypical, unfortunate street murder. Not an interesting case otherwise, but something happened. It involves the same prosecutor as Karen Reed. It involves the same lead detective, Michael Proctor. Yes, he's the lead detective, even though he doesn't want to admit that, or none of his friends want to admit that. And there was a hearing about that a few months ago where he was released from jail pre-trial because they didn't turn over search warrants in a murder case for years. And you see this hearing where the prosecutor testifies, again, same prosecutor as in Karen's case. And his attitude is, I don't know, I gave him what I had, whatever. And what do you want from me? And I'm going to tell you what you want to know. I don't want to be here. And it's 12:45. I need to order my bologna sandwich for lunch. So can we leave? And it's nothing is more illustrative of just the culture of conscious disregard and breathtaking indifference to a defendant's rights, his rights to evidence under the Constitution, under the 14th Amendment, the 6th Amendment. And even and in a case like that, this Miles King case is a case that would never be on the radar. And if they're willing to do it in a case like Karen's, which is very much on the radar, it begs the question, what do you think is going on in all these cases that nobody gives a shit about? Pardon my French. These cases that, she doesn't have, or these defendants don't have the publicity, whether it's because of the lawyer, the interest in the fact pattern, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to act like that when the lights are shining brightest, like in Karen's case, then it ought to scare the hell out of the public about what they're willing to do when the lights aren't shining so bright. And I think King was a perfect example of that.
Yeah. Well, right. And there's I think 6 other defendants roughly that are also, right, because it turns out there might actually be something in, his texts also that could be useful to these defendants, which would that surprise any of us? Of course not.
No, I mean, look, there are, we have protective orders in our case, so we're not allowed to share, a lot of things. A lot of our public filings are, redacted out in substantial part, but there are communications between Michael Proctor and some of these other people that, the public hasn't seen or is unaware of, that would blow your mind and make you say, these people are corrupt, or they're not serious, they're not professional. And, it begs the question, why are we protecting that? I mean, the public has a right to know if there are dirty cops doing dirty things. What could be more in the public interest than shining a light on that? But, again, with courts rule, lawyers follow. So we have to go with what they determine. But at some point, all of this will be public, and it'll just cast more reason for the public to lack confidence in the criminal justice system in that part of Massachusetts, which already is in crisis. I mean, does anybody right now seriously have confidence in the Norfolk County criminal justice system? I don't know why you would, based on Karen, Aiden, this King case, Sandra Birchmore, Brian Walsh, who, by the way, is almost certainly guilty, but there are shenanigans in his case as well. You could go on and on. I mean, again, these are cases that are in the public. What's happening in the cases that the public don't watch? I cringe at the thought.
Do you think, I mean, because it must be that they thought, the DA's office thought there was no way that, in Aiden's case, for example, that you guys would get the discovery or the emails or see these interactions or see, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Of course you were going to find out about all of this.
I don't know. Again, I just think that there is a culture of indifference. I don't even know if there is literally a culture of suppression as much as there is of one of indifference, which is, we'll get to it when we get to it. What do you care? It is what it is. And, that may work for them, but, that doesn't work for me. Where I come from in in terms of cultural practice.
Mhm.
These kinds of things would lead to dismissal of cases. Judges are very aggressive with a defendant's right to due process, mostly in New York, where I primarily practice. And so there's a lot of culture shock in terms of what I'm seeing in Massachusetts. I mean, I'm learning, believe me, I'm learning. But, there are things that happen there which just blow your mind. I mean, you mentioned something 10 minutes, 15 minutes ago about inverted video,
Mhm.
From Karen's first trial. In New York or somewhere else, that's a mistrial, like that, no question. That is just an egregious discovery violation for so many different reasons. Sandbagging the defense in the middle of trial. What would have happened in New York is judge would have cleared the courtroom, get the jury out of there, would have looked at the prosecutor and said, "What the hell is going on? How do you explain this?" It doesn't even matter what they would have said. There's no answer. The defense would have been prejudiced. They would have been sandbagged, and that case would have been dismissed, murder trial or not. In Massachusetts, it was a complete non-starter. It was just completely, cross-examine and do the best you can. And I think that's just disgraceful, but that's the culture.
It's shocking. I mean, it was so shocking. And obviously the judge in that case, there's almost nobody that I have, let's say, a bigger problem with in all of the Karen Reed lore, because of her behavior. It was just so revolting, so egregious, and just unbelievable over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think a lot of her rulings were awful. I think the culture of her courtroom was unique. The idea that, all business has to be settled at the bench, outside the presence of the jury, outside the presence of the public, outside, sealed transcripts. I don't understand that. But, judges rule their courtrooms the way they do. But I think that for both of Karen's trials to be on a national platform the way they were, and for the public to see, and you always want the public to learn about how the process works. I mean, only good can come from public access to trials and learning and being engaged. Those trials were awful for the public to see, to think that that's how court business is generally held, because I'm here to tell you that's not the way it is.
Right. And the first Karen Reed trial was the first trial I had watched, play by play, and I was losing my mind because I didn't have any idea whether this behavior was normal or abnormal. It's insane. It was just
entirely not normal.
Yeah. Another question. So it seems like, and I wonder about this in New York, is it standard, I know it is in Massachusetts, for the DA's office to have their own police force?
No, I mean, in Massachusetts, each DA's office has its own embedded division of the state police. I mean, New York, obviously is much bigger. I mean, I'm a city. So, the NYPD is the largest police agency in the United States. They have, not only do they have, in Manhattan alone, probably 30 precincts, and Brooklyn has another 30, and every borough, precincts go up to the 10 whatever by the time you get out to Staten Island. And of course, then they have specialized units, Manhattan North Homicide, Manhattan South, Brooklyn North, Brooklyn South, Queens, whatever. So no, it's not specialized. I mean, you have do whatever they do and you work with them. But the problem in Massachusetts is, by having these small units embedded in the DA's office, they become too close, and it becomes a fraternity. And but when you become too close, lines blur, and you protect each other. You don't want to hurt each other. You become friends. You go out and drink. You do this. You share secrets. And you saw it in this case. I mean, they had no concern about what Proctor and his goons were doing. You saw the messages between Proctor, Buchanan, Fanning, and the others. And they just thought it was business as usual. And it's just beyond inappropriate. But these people are all embedded together. And you saw these detectives, they donate money to the DA, which, by the way, in New York would be illegal. The Conflicts of Interest Board would not allow that. But, in Massachusetts, they have no problem when the state police are stuffing money in Morrissey's pocket. And, it doesn't matter what the amount is. It's not going to make or break him because, Buchanan gives Morrissey $100, but it's sending a message. I'm with you. I got you. I'm loyal. And then, the problem becomes what happens when there could be a tough situation and they all protect each other. And the reality is it's incestuous. It's not appropriate, and they should break it up. And I've said this for years since I started talking about this. They need to fumigate this arrangement. And you can only hope that when there's a new DA in Norfolk County sooner than later and throughout the state, that somebody will take the lead and say, you got to break up this system. You can't have cases involving prosecutors and detectives who are too friendly, because at the end of the day, if you accept that the prosecutors are honest and not corrupt, which is an interesting proposition in Norfolk County that perhaps many people don't accept, but you do accept that, you can't have a situation where they're just so close, so friendly, so fraternal with the cops who bring them all their cases. You don't want that. And in New York, I mean, when I was a prosecutor, yeah, I had detectives I would work with, but not to that level. Okay. Nobody sent messages like that. Nobody did any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's an incestuous, broken system.
Yeah. And not to mention, then you have, these different aspects because they're local, right? So you have that piece, then you all have them living in this town that they've grown up in, and then their friends have grown up in, and the whole thing, right? The larger.
That's an interesting point, because I don't know that was such well, it is kind of a factor in Karen's case because, Proctor, is like, a Canton goon reliving his glory days, from Canton High School, apparently, all these people. But, I think you saw more of this in like the Birchmore thing.
Oh, yeah.
They're all from Stoneham or whatever, Stoughton, whatever it is. And it's too incestuous. It's too close. And it's just bad policy. And you can't have this incestuous situation where everybody knows everyone, they grew up together. And to go back to Karen's situation, look at the witnesses, the McCabe's and Alberts, and they all went to high school with the Canton police. They all married each other.
Yeah.
None of them ever leave town. I mean, it's like the ultimate towny environment. And it's just beyond the fact that in some ways it's just pathetic, which is a different evaluation than what I'm talking about. But when they all know each other and they all married each other and they all know each other from, high school, cross country and this and that, and then they see each other 10 years later and they're all buddy. And then, you look at that case and they're all incestuous from Canton, except for one person, Karen.
Right.
It begs the question, did she become an easy patsy? Well, a lot of people think yes.
I mean, exactly, right? I know in New York, so the difference, just to give people an understanding, I think the last number I saw for how many NYPD uniform officers there's like 33,000. And by comparison, I Googled this like a week ago, and I think it was 2,100 Boston police officers uniform.
New York, I mean, look, when I was
massive.
When I was a prosecutor, I think it may have maxed out at like 45. It's huge. I mean, there are just so many. And I mean, New York is New York. Everyone understands that. But yeah, I mean, Boston is a large department. It's probably one of the 10 largest departments or 15 in the country. But even then, it's like, a tenth of the size. Like Canton, where there's probably like 30 or 40 max. It's very, very different.
Well, and I know in New York City, because I used to be the therapist that the NYPD, I was part of the group that they would send their folks to who had problems with substance abuse. And one of the big complaints was that if they were from, let's say, Staten Island, it was pretty much a guarantee they would not be working in Staten Island. They would send them totally as far away as they could get them.
Yeah, and no, that's a good point. I mean, like Staten Island, I think has like 2 or 3 precincts. Staten Island is tiny by New York City comparison, but yes, I mean, and look, a lot of cops are from Staten Island for the demographics and
Yes.
whatever, but by and large, they get shipped off Staten Island. Yeah, you do break it up to
Mhm.
avoid the kinds of potential conflicts and issues that arise that you saw in Karen's case, where it's just one large incestuous family.
And that's exactly, yeah, what ended up happening. And I think that's another thing that Aiden's case highlights, right? Because, like I said, I really saw, you guys laid it out so perfectly and so clearly, just the degree to which they were wanting to go to shut him down, recognizing what a serious threat he really was.
Yeah, I mean, we laid it out, and it's public record. I mean, the timeline, it speaks for itself. I mean,
Wild.
on or about April 12th or whatever it was of 2023, Karen's lawyers filed a bombshell motion alleging all kinds of nefarious conduct with members of the Alberts, McCabe's, and Michael Proctor. There was minimal coverage of that initially. Aiden picked it up, I think, on April 18th, wrote a story, and from that point, it was on. And within days, these people were saying, shut them up. And a lot of it's redacted, in the motion that's publicly filed. So I have to be careful about that. But, the reality is they definitely wanted to shut down a troublemaking journalist who was going against the grain and criticizing them and criticizing these people for what he was reporting based upon allegations that were made by Karen's lawyers, and which ultimately, she was acquitted, probably twice, actually, that people accepted. So, and, they continue to do it. They continue to go after him. They continue to go after her at taxpayer expense. It's just stunning in many ways. And I think also indicative, once again, I said earlier, of why, unfortunately, this part of Massachusetts has made itself a national laughingstock criminal justice. I mean, the amount of taxpayer money that has been spent chasing the great white whale or whales, of Karen and Aiden repeatedly.
Unbelievable.
It's just an insane amount of money. And then when you saw the percentage of the budget of that DA's office that went to getting Karen, that ought to piss off everyone who lives there, because there have to be criminals in that county who are not being prosecuted, that resources are not being dedicated to, because they are obsessed with this nonsense.
I mean, it's shocking. It just defies all logic. That's, Aperture would get $650,000+ for what they put forth. I mean, you saw.
Well, what they did was what I call lipstick on a pig. They took the state police, fakakta investigation of the first trial, which was pathetic. They put lipstick on the pig. They're a little more credible. I say a little because
a little.
The witnesses, well, at least one of the witnesses by accounts, appeared more credible. They cosplayed as John O'Keefe, bought some underwear, bought some shirts and a hat and some other clothes, bought some blue paint, and did the exact same experiment and said, look, we got it. And that's just embarrassing. And it's scandalous even. There was nothing new. There was nothing serious. That company probably damaged its ability moving forward. I mean, they made fools of themselves. One of them apparently already got fired, or at least left because of his resume fraud. And they added nothing other than fleecing taxpayers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if anything, it moved the needle the other way, right? Because they were so like defensive, right? Welcher was so combative the
Oh,
whole time.
he was no Welcher comes off or came off as the classic hired gun whore. I mean, that's just
Really did.
what it is. I mean, again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. This is my opinion. But the way he presented was, I have an opinion for sale to the highest bidder. Okay. And if you pay me enough, I'll say what I want to say, what you need, and we'll try to make it fit. And when you try to make it fit based on the data reports of this other guy, basically lies about his resume for years and years, if that's the best you have, maybe you should reevaluate the whole process and say, maybe we shouldn't be trying this case and fleecing taxpayers. Look, the case against Karen was a fraud, particularly the second trial. I mean, that's true irony. They paid a new prosecutor $500,000. They paid all these experts $500,000 or whatever it was to come in and do what? Without a conflict of interest, by the way, just to add to the financial cost, to do what? To make a joke out of this. And frankly, do worse than they did the first time.
Exactly. They doubled down at every stage of the game. This DA's office has doubled down, and you're sitting there going, this doesn't make any sense. It's just getting worse. It's like digging a bigger hole and then just keep digging, keep digging, keep digging.
You'll never see a situation in which a DA's office hires a special prosecutor for $500,000 without a conflict of interest. And there, in their mind, there was no conflict. They kept the same two original prosecutors, but they had to bring in a ringer for $500,000 because no one else in that office was either capable or willing. And how the taxpayers say, I'm okay with that, is shocking. And what's also shocking is that the lack of intellectual curiosity by the mainstream media, who never really asked the DA, not so much about, well, you have a special prosecutor, what's your thinking, but to say, why should the taxpayer, you are a DA's office of 50 or 60 skilled lawyers, you kept the same two lawyers from the first case, you're paying them, yet you had to fleece us for $500,000 to bring in another one. Why? Why pay for that? Is there no one willing to do it in your office? Are people telling you it's a shitty case? Are people telling you I won't do it because I think it's wrong? Do you think there's nobody competent? And where was the Boston Globe? Where was, NBC, Canton Confidential or whatever they called it, that would do their weekly show? Where were they to address those issues? And they didn't.
That is such an important point. The media and the way soup to nuts have covered the Karen Read case, period, was egregious. I mean, without Aiden, right? It's like you can't even say enough, because he really single-handedly, I know that his brand of journalism isn't for everyone, but certainly, and I learned this from him not too long ago, they knew who he was. The McAlberts knew exactly who he was. They knew he was a journalist, and that's why they were so afraid of him.
My understanding, and again, this is just, it is what it is. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't think so, though. A lot of them before this actually liked him. They liked his brand of exposing, because, before this,
that's right,
it's very pro-cop, very, exposing corruption. And the only difference is, in this case, the so-called bad guys were the cops. And he followed his conscience on the reporting and went with, I don't care that they're cops. If they're bad, they're bad. So they all knew who he was. I think John O'Keefe, actually, it was reported, followed him. And that, again, no one wants to disparage him, clearly. But they knew damn well who he was. I mean, one of the witnesses, as you know, in the first trial, even testified about, Sergeant Bukaki, right? I mean, that was one of the most, you've got to be moments. Yeah. That was clearly an own goal telling on yourself that you are obsessed with Turtle Boy because everybody knows he has these names, some of which are funny,
Right.
some of which may be crude to many.
Right.
But Sergeant Bukaki is kind of funny. I mean, it is what it is.
Oh, it's a great
And,
moment.
and I think more than once she called him Bukaki, which is just an own goal. Like, wow, you really follow this guy.
Yeah, she was so anxious, right? I mean, she was so anxious. She was so nervous throughout. It just came out. And you're right. She was probably so much more listening to Aiden's rendition of the case that was what came to mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, but it's true.
It is crazy. So where are we at now with Turtle Boy's case, with the witness intimidation case?
Cases.
Case
I mean,
is.
yeah, it's well, it's a mess. So
Mhm.
present, there are 2 indictments, 1 investigation. So that's what's going on right now.
Mhm.
One of the cases is literally what I call stateless. There's no prosecutor. They've all been kicked off or asked to be relieved. It's just hanging in the ether and dying
Mm.
because of conflicts of interest for any number of reasons. The other 2 situations are pending, as very aggressive motions to dismiss for all kinds of misconduct. But even before we get to that, they're pending another motion seeking to recuse the prosecutor because of a conflict of interest, the same of which resulted in him asking to leave one of the other cases.
Mhm.
So they are in a complete state of flux, which is also very indicative of just how flawed this all is. It's not common for cases to have special prosecutors because the DA recuses himself, and then the special prosecutor gets kicked off because he makes himself a witness.
Mm.
And another special prosecutor says, I have to be relieved because I'm being sued by the alleged victim. And then the defense has to move to kick you off other cases
Mhm.
because that same witness is involved in the other cases and is suing the lead detective and threatening to sue the DA. I mean, to say that these cases are just one giant shit show, that's what it is. I don't know what other word even applies. I mean, these
Mhm.
are just a complete mess, and it has to be sorted out. It will, one way or the other, the hard way or the easy way.
Mhm.
These cases are just flawed beyond belief for so many different reasons.
So what happens if, Cosgrove has to step away and then the DA's office has to step away? Who tries the case?
When you get an answer to that, let me know, because again, it's like virtually unprecedented.
I see. Okay.
I mean, look, our position is that the DA can't even assign a new
Yeah.
prosecutor because they're being threatened of being sued, and any move they make could be perceived to be in their own interest rather than, justice in terms of whatever that means on the case. So
Right.
that's how these cases become stateless. And, at the last court appearance, the judge indicated to them, well, you figure it out. You have 30 days to figure it out. Now, what does that mean? I don't know, because this never happens. I would assume the options are to go to the attorney general and ask them to assign someone. Now, the attorney general won't take the case. They punted already multiple times because they didn't think this was worthy of prosecution back then. Now it's 1,000 times worse. Why would they do it now? Could the attorney general give them 5 names of people to say maybe they want to do this, or another county DA? I guess they could, but what lawyer with any self-dignity or concern about their integrity and credibility is jumping into this?
Mm.
I mean, who would do that?
I mean, it's a high profile spot, right?
That's the attraction. It's high profile, but high profile is not good when you're on the wrong side of a dirty case. And, do you want to step in and have to defend the grand jury behavior in this case, or the lack of disclosure of evidence in this case, or going after a journalist? Do you want to, defend a case where one of the most important witnesses is suing the prosecutor, the lead detective, and the DA, where she's online on a daily basis attacking Jennifer McCabe, attacking other witnesses in the case? I mean, in the last few days alone, there have been public allegations that by this witness that Jennifer McCabe, improperly influenced her to cooperate and collected voodoo dolls of Aiden Carney and Karen Reed and left them on her table for everyone to see. I mean, who wants to deal with this? I mean, this is absolutely freaking nuts.
That's a good question.
That's what these cases are. And at what point do the taxpayers say, I can't take this anymore? They're going to get all like the guy from Network, right? I can't stand this and I can't take this anymore. Make it stop. There's got to be a better basis to allocate public resources than this.
You think, right? I mean, this is just the most egregious. What is going on with the judges in Aiden's cases, right? Because I thought that you had Doolin, and then all of a sudden, Krupp was there. What goes on there? How does that work?
I don't know. This is another one of those just weird Massachusetts things that has to be sorted out. In New York, when you have a case that's in what we call Supreme Court, which Massachusetts calls Superior Court, it goes to a certain court part, part 42, part 51, whatever. And there is a regular judge, and that judge sits in that part and, barring vacations and sickness or whatever, you have a judge who sees the case all the way through unless and until it's time for trial. Apparently, the way they do it in Massachusetts is they just rotate endlessly by county, by date, and you get multiple judges dealing with multiple things, which probably doesn't matter 90% of the time. But the problem is when you get a case like this, which is really involved, really nuanced, has just a bizarre history with so many things, whoever the judge is, it is better suited to be in front of one. No question. We'll have to wait and see what happens because there's kind of conflicting information about who's handling what. But look, again, we go where they send us and have to deal with it. But the system that they do it in Massachusetts, I think, is just flawed. I mean, that's my own personal view. It's probably biased because of the culture I come from. But you have a judge who's familiar with the case. Why would you move it around to somebody who may be less familiar when you're dealing with such nuanced information?
You would think. I mean, you would think that any case could have a lot of nuanced information, right? Unless it was just a less involved case. Maybe there's going to be a trial for 6 hours, but barring that, you would think that you need that information if you're the judge.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I'm a guest here. So, you have to do it the way the local rules handle it.
Right.
It's very different. I mean, in Massachusetts, everything is a motion. I mean, it almost feels like you have to write a motion if you want to go to the bathroom. You got a motion to get a hall pass to go to the bathroom. It's not how we do it in New York. A lot of people laugh at you're writing letters. That's how real lawyers do it in New York, in state and federal court. I don't know what to tell you. If you don't like it there, whatever. But, there's just the practice is different elsewhere. Ultimately, you have to conform yourself to the way they do it. It's their jurisdiction. But as far as the rotating judges, I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's how they do it. So it's how they do it.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I was didn't know where I was. I was very confused because all of a sudden I thought you guys were going to be in front of this judge. And now that I guess they rotate.
And they rotate even counties. I mean, it's not even just they rotate sessions within Norfolk County. They leave, they come back, they go, They go to criminal, they go to civil. That's just not how it's done in New York. You are a criminal or civil judge. You sit in a particular courtroom in a particular county, and the cases that's what you get. And I do think, maybe I'm biased, it's a better system. I mean, judges are much more familiar with cases when they sit in a particular courtroom with a particular expertise in either criminal or civil. But it's not how they do it in Massachusetts, and we just have to play the game as it's given to us.
It's wild. It's wild to see, right? I mean,
People
talk about Florida and New York, but then this is wild. I mean, it's just wild to watch these differences play out.
I'm surprised at how they do things in Massachusetts, but again, it's their system, and I'm a guest here, so it's not for me to decide.
I get the distinct sense, and I don't want to, put you in this, in the position of having to address this question, but I get the sense that they really do not like the attention that is on them. They really don't like it.
Yes, I agree. And again, that could be cultural and whatever. I mean, Norfolk County is a suburban county in Massachusetts. It's not a small county, but it's not a large county. For whatever reason, they have had their share of high-profile murder cases and whatnot, but they don't generally have media cases. For example, I practice in all over New York, but my home court, my whole life has been Manhattan. Every single day, there are high-profile cases, and the New York Post is in court every day. Can be a case that's notorious because of the allegations. It can be celebrity defendants. It can be any number of reasons, but we're used to all the time publicity in cases. And I think LA is the same way, very similar. Large cities, maybe other large cities are like that too. Suburban county in Massachusetts, I think, is less used to that, and I think you're gonna wrench up and you don't like it. And even when they do get coverage, I mean, let's be honest, a small article in the Boston Globe is not going to have the reach of tabloid wood in the New York Post. There's a difference. But I think culturally, they do get more tense about the so-called big case, and they're not used to it the way New York, LA, and maybe some other places are.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like there's a real reaction to it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk for just a moment about the civil trial, Karen's civil case. So this is something I know nothing about. I've been trying to understand this and would love to understand it better.
Right.
When people are talking about Karen maybe going the federal route as opposed to trying to bring, the McAlberts into the suit that the O'Keeffes are bringing against her, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, I thought initially, and again, I'm not involved in any of the civil litigations. I obviously know all these people, have relationships with them, but I have no involvement in that litigation, and I have no insight in it. I naturally assumed that when the civil litigation was coming, that these would be what we call 1983 civil rights federal lawsuits. That was my assumption. And that they would drag in the state police, the Alberts, McCabe's, and then the only interesting legal question was, do they have a mechanism to bring in the DA's office? Which is really hard because they have immunity for virtually everything. And I don't want to get too legalese with people because it'll put everyone to sleep. But it's really, really hard to sue prosecutors. The system does not want it. They don't want to encourage people every time they think they have a grievance to just sue prosecutors.
Of course.
And I understand that. But the problem is when there's a valid basis to do so. So I thought they would bring these 1983 actions and that there was potentially a backdoor to sue the DA under a theory of negligent supervision of people, not training them in knowing Brady and disclosure of evidence and whatnot, in what lawyers call a Monell claim. It's actually a federal case, but it was like Monell versus the city of New York, to allow you to sue a prosecutor for negligence under a theory of improper supervision and whatnot. I thought they might do that. Clearly, they're not going to, because they announced a couple of weeks ago that they're not suing the DA and they're going to sue the police, the McCabe's, Alberts, Brian Higgins, and others, and that they're going to try to interplead them into the existing action, which, was, on one hand, my first thought was, well, that's surprising. On the other hand, it does make sense from their perspective, in that they are Karen's defense in the case in which she's been.
Right.
And, she may be in a situation where she can, if the court allow, there was discussion whether she's allowed to do this. If she is, they could kill two birds with one stone. By suing these people, they clear her and then recover against them at the same time.
Right.
Money, resources, and whatnot. So I understand what they're doing. I think, we just thought it would be a federal case, but I get what they're doing.
And that would still be a civil suit.
Yes.
Okay. So it's just a federal civil suit.
Yes. They're doing it in Plymouth County State Court. And if the court allows them, it appears they'll just join them in the current lawsuit. If the court doesn't, then they'll just bring a separate lawsuit and you'll have double the litigation. I mean, from a judicial economy standpoint, it does make sense to allow them to drag them into the current lawsuit. And again, I think from Karen's perspective, you just kill two birds with one stone. I mean, by suing these people and making your case against them, you are, in essence, in a civil sense, exonerating her and showing the liability ought to go to them to my favor.
And I mean, how would that work? Would she literally be also bringing a countersuit at the same time? She would.
Yeah, no, they want to drag these people in, it would give them a right to depose them, call them as witnesses in the case, and just expand the courtroom to you're going to need a lot more tables. You're going to need a bigger boat if that happens, because here come, the Alberts, the McCabe's, Brian Higgins, and whoever else. I mean, if they're allowed to do it, it almost feels like an old-fashioned, New York mafia trial where,
Right.
50 people sitting at the table. I mean,
wow.
If they're allowed to do it, that's what you're looking at.
And in that case, I mean, so how does that work? So like each team just goes one after another. One's the prosecutor, one's the defense, then one's the prosecutor, one's the defense.
Not prosecutor because it's civil, but
Right.
yeah, plaintiff and defense.
Right.
And all these people would potentially testify at the civil case. And because you have a different series of lawyers, they're all subject to multiple rounds of examination. I mean, it would be a mess. I mean, look, from our standpoint, I hope it happens. I mean, I would love to see these people sued in this case while our criminal case is going on. I'd love to see lawyers as skilled as Alan Jackson deposing them, and us getting access to that. It is what it is, but it's up to how they decide to do it and what the court allows. So we're just spectators, but we certainly have a rooting interest.
Okay, two more questions. What do you think the odds are that the O'Keefe family is what's the right phrase? I mean, to me, these claims that they are bringing against Karen are just so absurd, like just fundamentally, just patently absurd. It doesn't even make sense why you'd bring them, because there's no evidence to support them. Never mind my personal feelings about the case. How could they possibly think that they're going to win?
Brainwashed by the Norfolk DA previously, and they're going down that road. It's what they believe. The reality is, their lawyers are working on contingency. other than perhaps some expenses. So, they're not really on the hook. The more interesting issue is why these lawyers are willing to do it, because they're at risk. They're fronting the litigation. And I think that, and they're skilled lawyers. The plaintiff's lawyers are skilled lawyers, but, 100% of zero is zero. And the reality is, how are you proving Karen Read is civilly liable for what happened to John O'Keefe if you can't even scientifically and from an engineering standpoint establish that there was an impact, right? I mean, the defense, the civil defense, Karen, they're just going to call the same medical and engineering witnesses who are going to say there's nothing happened here. And then what is the prosecution plaintiff's argument? Well, there's taillight pieces. Okay, that sounds great in principle, but how are you proving that? Are you calling Michael Proctor? Are you calling a mechanic? You think that's going to help? I mean, so, and when you heard the plaintiff's lawyer argue in their motion about she knows what she did, look, that's just a lawyer being a zealous advocate, but that at the end of the day, that's bluster. That's bada beep, bada boop. His opinion on she knows what she did is not evidence. Where is the evidence to show?
Right.
There isn't going to be any. And at the end of the day, if she didn't strike John O'Keefe with her car, then you can't blame her for causing his death. Right. And, the standard of proof is much lower. It's true at a civil trial, but go to the criminal trial where Karen had no burden of proof. Forget the legality of the burden of proof. Watching that trial, if you said on the issue of did she hit him, and you say, here's the prosecution argument, taillight pieces, right? Found over the course of weeks, whatever other evidence they have. And on the defense side, you have two engineers, this La Posada, the medical examiner, the other witnesses, and you say, is like the defense kind of proved, even though they had no burden, that there was no impact. Kind of proved by more than a preponderance. The civil case, the plaintiff has to prove by a preponderance. How are they doing that? Like the DA at the trial, they blew their load. They paid $600,000 to advocate. They brought in all these people, and they didn't even come close. With all due respect to the plaintiffs in the civil case, what are they going to do? The ARCA witnesses are going to say what they're going to say. Dr. La Posada is going to say what she's going to say. The medical examiner, who was supposed to be a prosecution witness, she'll be a defense witness in the civil case. Scorda Bello, whatever.
Scorda Bello, yeah.
And you could go on. And then what are you doing? They're not calling Aperture. No way. They're not going to call Mike Proctor. What are they going to do? They're going to call Buchanan, Tully. This case seems to be dead on arrival for the simple reason that there's no causal link. If there's no accident, there's no liability for Karen. So, but from the O'Keefe standpoint, it's not really out of their pocket. It's the lawyers. And it's very interesting. They filed their lawsuit before the second trial. They kind of gambled that they would win, because if they won the criminal trial, there's this ugly concept of res judicata, issues that are already determined need not be relitigated. They could just issue the conviction into evidence and they would win, because if she's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, then clearly she caused it by a preponderance. I mean, as a matter of grade logic. But they filed the lawsuit real early. They're stuck with it. And I just don't see it.
Well, why doesn't it work the other way too then? Right? Because she was found not guilty. So by the same standard.
Because the burden of proof is less. They don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The O'Keefes have to just show by a preponderance, which is a lesser standard. But my point is, even giving them the lesser standard, even though Karen had no burden at the criminal trial, in essence, her defense team proved
Yeah.
by more than a preponderance.
Yes.
There was no accident.
Right. I see.
Between the medical and engineering evidence, and I don't think the O'Keefes as plaintiffs are ever going to get past that.
Right. Okay. So maybe they'll get $10,000 out of one of these bars or something. You know,
They
to
may
settle.
get money from the bars. The bars
Right.
may pay as a matter of sheer pragmatism, like
Right.
I don't care, go away. But I don't think Karen would offer them a cent. I don't know this. Obviously, I'm not part of that legal team, but it's in her interest, I think, to fight and win. And I think also reputationally, I just don't see.
I agree.
I mean, she's, as you can see from the trials, she's made a pretty stern stuff. And the idea of capitulating to this is not likely.
No. And so with trying to think of the way that I want to ask this question. So if let's say that I mean clearly I can't imagine settling unless the O'Keefes just pull the lawsuit, which I like you said there's no reason for them to do that. There's nothing for them to lose anymore, it appears, right? Because
but I also believe and I think it's unfortunate. I think they're wrong, but I also respect them. I think they sincerely believe she did it, and I don't blame them for that. I blame the DA and the state leaning and whispering in their ear for like years. But so, I mean, I don't blame them for thinking what they think, but I do think, as in my view, delusional as it is, that they sincerely believe that this is Karen's fault. I just think that they're like way off base, but I think they're not doing this as some sick exercise. I think they have a warped belief of the truth because of what they were told for months and months and months.
Oh yeah, and I just don't think they have any way to prove it, right? I mean,
no, there's no
Karen
proof.
said she hit him. That's their big proof, right? She acted weird that morning. That's their other big proof.
That's just, I don't think that's going to carry the day in the face of compelling medical and engineering science to the contrary. I mean, you know, those are hard sciences, okay? Engineering, physics, and medical science. No disrespect to psychiatry.
No.
What I mean is, it's not necessarily opinion based. It is like hard science.
I get it. Yeah.
Mathematical. I mean, the ARCA guys are mathematical science. The medical people are like, this is how the human body works. How the hell are they going to get past that? And the answer is they're not.
Mm-hmm. They're not. So we're going to go through this very lengthy exercise now. And this is the last question. With these depositions, so for the civil case, I mean, I'm assuming anything that we have in the public space that's already there could be brought in to the civil trial.
So the depositions are a real problem for these people, a lot more than testifying in the criminal case. So at a civil deposition, there is no Judge Beverly Canoni to wave the white flag and say, no, I'm not allowing this. Civil depositions are very intimidating because when you're the one being deposed, number one, the risk is it's being videotaped. Okay. And you know, that's just the way it works. But number two, and even worse, is even if your lawyer objects, with a few limited exceptions, you have to answer the question, even if it ultimately is not admissible in court. So, you know, the questions you don't have to answer at a deposition are, you know, if it calls for breaching privilege and a lawyer says, I'm instructing you not to answer that because you're asking about a privileged conversation between lawyer, client, husband, and wife. There's nothing the questioning attorney can do. The lawyer's going to say, forget it. That's off limits. And no judge would disagree. But when you object to the form of a question or it calls for hearsay or it calls for speculation, you can object and say, I object to the form of this. And then in a deposition, the answer is, that's great. Answer the freaking question. Okay. And then we'll deal with it later. So you can't hide behind having a judge protect you from all of these ticky-tack objections to form and whatnot. You're going to have to answer the questions. And so if Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, and all of those people are sued, they're going to get deposed by someone like Alan Jackson and have to answer his questions. That's the bottom. Brian Higgins is going to have to answer the questions about, his weird text messages and his gesticulations in the bar,
right,
with John O'Keefe and all. I mean, those are questions that are all going to have to be answered.
Right. He was never actually, asked about that directly because, right, my understanding is that came out after the first trial.
Brian Higgins has never been questioned about the bizarre behavior in the bar. Chris Albert has never been questioned about holding him back. Brian Albert has never been questioned about this. Nobody has ever been questioned about this. Brian Higgins has never been questioned about what the hell he was doing at the Canton Police Department when he claimed he was going to move cars and he didn't. He's never been questioned about the phone call. Anik and Proctor have never been questioned, not really, about how the hell the inverted video happened this way and why wasn't it disclosed and why did Proctor have it in his back pocket for 2 years. The civil depositions for these people are going to be UGLY, 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 ugly.
Wow. So, and my guess would be they're going to try to get out of it at all costs because
there's no way to get out of it. I mean, they have a right to serve notice of depositions, and you're going to take it. And I mean, unless they want to be held in contempt of court, they're going to answer the questions.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, do you think that does the O'Keefe family realize that? I mean, I guess like you said, right? They just want to see Karen pay.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I can't speak for what they think. All I can say is, I mean, their loved one was killed.
I get it.
Or died. I don't even know if he was killed, but he died in mysterious circumstances. God knows that family has been through like more tragedy than probably any family you or I know, on multiple occasions. And they seem to believe that she's responsible, whether we think that's delusional or not. So they're pursuing it. They have every right to do it, but it doesn't mean that they're right and entitled to recovery in what they're doing. And I don't think legally they are, no matter how much you can sympathize what they're feeling and going through. And they're want to assign blame to the person that they think is responsible. But, facts are stubborn things. And ultimately facts control, not emotions.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So it's going to be a trip. And I also understand this could take a long time, right? I mean,
go on forever. Yeah.
Right.
And especially if Karen's people are able to successfully drag in all of these other people, I mean, the logistics of it. Yeah. I mean, this will go on for a long time, even though they seem to have a pretty serious judge who appears to know what he's doing and very judicious and wants to move it along. But there's only so much you can do if there's like 30 parties in a case.
Right. And it sounded like it would be kind of dragged out over a longer period of time than even in a criminal proceeding. That's the way it sort of sounded to me.
Yeah. Civil cases take longer. I mean, criminal cases, the public interest in having it resolved. I mean, they're just fighting over money.
Right.
No one's going to jail. So they're less important than criminal cases, and criminal cases are always going to take priority, especially when someone's incarcerated, although that's not the case in any of the criminal cases that we're even talking about. But yeah, no, the civil case is going to go on forever.
Wow. Okay. That was a lot. Mark, thank you so much for coming and having this conversation with me. I could keep you forever and just pick your brain, right? Because we all need an attorney, especially doing what I'm doing all day long is just looking at all these cases, and there's questions that come up constantly. So I so appreciate you giving me some of your time. This is really, really fun. And Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to do it again sometime.
You tell me. It's fun.
I will absolutely let you know. Everybody else, I will see you all tomorrow night for our normal Wednesday night live, 10 p.m. I know we're the late folks around here. Everybody, thank you, Mark. You're
You
the
really
best.
are from New York if you're doing it late. Everything's later.
I know. I can't do mornings. I'm probably better served doing it, earlier, but I have clients too, right? I got clients, and so kids, clients, the whole thing.
Keep the lights on. I know.
Got to keep the lights on. That's right. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your night. Mark, thank you so much. Denise, you're the best mod ever. And everybody, I will see you tomorrow. Good night, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.